Hey everybody, welcome to Crime on the Record. I'm Candace, and today we are going to be discussing the unsolved murder of Jeannette DePalma. So, Jeannette DePalma was a 16-year-old girl from Springfield Township, and this is her right here. She looks so young and innocent. It's just so absolutely sad. On Monday, August 7th of 1972, she left her house. So she tells her mom that she's going to catch the train to visit a friend. But by the next day, her parents report her missing because she still has not returned home. It takes 6 weeks until September 19th when a dog brings a right forearm and hand back to a local apartment complex to its owner for them to find her body. So the officers that arrived at the home said there was white nail polish still on the fingernails. So they knew that this was probably a girl that they were looking for. So I imagine they probably knew, in the beginning that they might be looking for Jeannette, which is sad because I'm sure her parents were expecting a much different outcome. They did find her remains atop a cliff inside of it's a quarry, but I got to tell you, I have no idea how to pronounce this. It's Houdaille. So Hadali. I have absolutely no idea. So we're just going to say quarry. So accounts have varied over the years, but it's been reported by supposed witnesses at the scene that her body was surrounded by occult objects and wooden crosses, as you can see here in the photo. And it looks like, they're saying that there was branches or logs across the top and the sides of her, and then all these wooden crosses around her. In addition to that, and also they're saying that it was a coffin shaped perimeter made out of these branches and logs. Residents later claim, in addition to that, that they found her lying on a pentagram surrounded by animal remains. Now, law enforcement denied this, but rumors did continue to spread due to the body being found on a cliff called the Devil's Teeth. So, as you can imagine, it's pretty easy. And I don't know if you grew up in a big city or a small town, but any kind of small town, I can tell you from growing up in one that news spreads pretty fast and rumors travel even quicker. So I imagine, the salaciousness of hearing about this occult activity probably made people just rush to judgment on that. They had a really hard time finding out what caused her death, with the ME saying that an autopsy couldn't be done because of the amount of decomposition in her body by the time that they found her. They thought it could be strangulation, but there was also large amounts of lead found in her body, which I don't even know where lead would come from other than like lead paint. I mean, I don't know, like out in the woods like that where you would even get lead, but they finally ruled it just a suspicious death rather than a homicide because they didn't have an exact cause of death. There was no evidence of any bullet holes, broken bones, or any kind of traumatic injury. So, I mean, that kind of makes sense that strangulation would be the thought they would have because they couldn't find anything wrong with the body. There were rumors later on of her dying of an overdose, but there was no paraphernalia found near her body, and she wasn't known to be a drug user other than occasionally smoking marijuana. But, nowadays, most people don't think of marijuana as being even drugs, so to speak, because it's legal in so many places. But even being illegal back then, I mean, most teenagers were smoking marijuana at that point. So I wouldn't imagine that that would really be considered a huge drug user just because you were smoking some pot. So, about 2 weeks after they found her body, several news outlets began to report that she could be the victim of an occult sacrifice by a satanic cult or a local coven of witches from a nearby reservation, which again, really sad when things like that, like rumors are spread, because it's almost, you wonder if it wasn't just because that the people living on this reservation were talked about so differently because people didn't know what was going on the reservation or anything about these people. So they made up all these rumors and stories about them being these occult coven of witches and into all this witchcraft just because they didn't understand them or know them very well. There weren't many tips after this, so the case pretty much continued to just go cold. I mean, I don't think anybody was coming forward with anything else. Everybody just kind of bought into the occult human sacrifice and left it at that, which I cannot imagine how hard that was for her family because as the parent of a teenager, you already worry about your kids all the time, who they're hanging out with. Are they good influences, bad influences? When they go to hang out at a friend's house or leave the house, you're like, oh God, are they making good decisions? Are they going to get into something with a friend that is, bad for them? Are they going to run into somebody bad for them? So to think that not only was your child killed, but possibly sacrificed, I cannot imagine the pain that those parents went through. So it goes cold. And then in 1997, which is, let's say 72, so 92 would have been 20 years, so 25 years later, Weird New Jersey magazine receives a letter from a fan named Billy Martin. The letter says that there was an alleged human sacrifice in the quarry near Springfield. So they seem to know about the death and about it being in the quarry. He tells about the dog finding the bones, but says he's not sure if this is true or a myth, and he never mentions a name. So he doesn't say Jeanette's name, but how many dogs were bringing home bones from a murder at the quarry? So we pretty much know he's talking about Jeannette. Now, they didn't have Google back then. So, I mean, I remember graduating in 99 and doing one of my last papers in school on a computer. But I don't know if Google was even a thing at that point. I don't know what year Google was created, but I don't imagine they had Google in 97. So it wasn't really as easy as it is now. I mean, nowadays, if we get a letter like that, we could just say, hey, let me Google it and see what this death is about, who that was that they found, and find out more about them. But then they really had a hard time finding anything on the death because you have to kind of know who you're looking for, what to look for. So they decide to publish the letter just to see if they'd get any kind of response because their thoughts are, we don't know who this person is. All they've given us is a location. They don't have a name. They don't have any more information. So let's put this letter out there and see if anybody knows what they're talking about. Now, almost immediately, they start getting replies, which is great. This is when the magazine was able to finally put a name to the person in the letter that was described. So sometime later, the magazine said they tried to reach out to the police about the case, but they were told all of the files had been destroyed in Hurricane Floyd in 1999. So they get this letter in 97, and then they reach out to the police later who say the files were destroyed in 1999. So this had to have been years later before the magazine actually reached out to the police. So I would think that you get a letter, you would immediately contact the police. But I don't know. I don't have a magazine. I don't run a magazine. So I'm sure they had tons of other stories they were looking into at the same time. So, like I said, they reach out to the police. They're told all the files have been destroyed. So they, over the years, try to reach out to retired investigators in Springfield. And they are told that the crime scene photos had been missing from the file anyway. So basically, the investigators are like, look, the files were destroyed in Hurricane Floyd, but the crime scene photos weren't even in there anyway. They also repeatedly talked about the scene being a local spot where kids like to party. So they pretty much used that to reaffirm their idea that she'd been partying with friends and overdosed. So it almost feels like these cops just wrote her off. I mean, I don't want to say that. I hate judging law enforcement. Hindsight's 2020, and it's so easy to sit on the outside looking in and critique everything and criticize, but I don't know, it's almost like they just immediately deemed her, some young drug addict who went up there, got high and died and OD'd. And so they didn't they didn't try to look any further. In 2019, though, Jeanette's nephew was able to get help, and he fills out a FOIA request, which is Freedom of Information Act for anybody who doesn't know. So typically, these, I think they're pretty straightforward, but I know that there's certain information that has to be on them. And if you don't include every single bit of information they ask for, they're going to reject it. So, because I imagine it's easier for them to just be like, you didn't give us all the information. We're not going back and looking for this stuff. So I feel like they probably look for any reason to deny a FOIA request, just so they don't have to do the work of going and searching for these old files. But like I said, he got help with it. So he was able to fill out the request exactly the way it should be filled out. And after 2 years of delays because of COVID, we all know COVID had everything running so behind, he finally gets her case file in 2021. So apparently the files weren't destroyed. So, I don't know if they flat out lied or were just too lazy to check when the magazine asked them about this. Because, he fills out this FOIA request, which I got to tell you, I don't know if I would even thought to do. If the cops had already told this magazine that the files were destroyed, I may have just thought, well, they've been destroyed. We're going to have to figure out something another way. But no, her nephew's like, I'm going to see what I can find. So he gets something back in 2021. And in the case files, not only is there case files, but the crime scene photos are there that they told them had been lost. So not only did they lie about, or, were too lazy to look into the case file, but you have these investigators saying that the crime scene photos were lost and weren't there anyway, which is ludicrous because they're right there in the file when he gets it. So the magazine says that they get the crime scene photos and that it shows nothing of any occult activity in the photos. Now, let's see. I believe I have another picture here. So this is actually the crime scene, one of the crime scene photos. Now they blurred out her body, obviously, because we don't need to see that. And I'm sure her family would not want these, a picture of her body out there. But as you can see here, there are no animal remains. There's no crosses. And then, they also noticed, as you can see in the photos, that there's a ton of growth around the body. So they question, and I kind of do too, whether or not this is used or was used as a space for partying. I mean, there's no bottles, there's no cans, there's no paraphernalia or anything around the area. And it looks pretty overgrown. I got to tell you, when I was a teen, I mean, yeah, sure, we partied and did things, but I don't see us going out in the woods and sitting in brush this high just to sit around and get high. I mean, there's plenty of places that you could go that are cleared out. So I don't see a bunch of teens sitting around in this growth. I mean, the only thing that's flat is exactly where she's laying. I mean, every part of this around her is covered in overgrowth. So to me, this looks like somebody killed her and placed her body there. It doesn't necessarily look like any place that anyone was hanging out at. So what they can also see in some of the pictures, and I didn't see these pictures, so I don't know if they've ever been published, but I couldn't find them. But they see that Jeanette's purse contents were dumped about 8 feet away from her body. Now, the purse wasn't there, but the contents were. So according to what can be seen in the photo, as well as the evidence log in the file, so, apparently they did log the information correctly. They did find the following items. So some tissues, Marcol, I think is the brand of tissues. I don't know that matters, but a Vicks inhaler, a small compact, lipstick, a comb, and a key on a ring. So I don't know if it was a car key, house key, but a key ring with a key on it, and a clear vial with an unknown substance. They say it resembled a Coricidin bottle, and her mom, Florence DePalma, had told the press that her daughter had had a mild cold on the day she vanished. So I imagine it, I mean, I don't know exactly what it was, but considering it resembled a Chlorcidin bottle, which is for colds, and she had a cold, I imagine it's something, some kind of medicine or something for her cold. And then she had a small thing of eyeshadow. So, I mean, the typical 16-year-old's purse. You know, she's got this clear vial with something that looks like some kind of cold medicine, a Vicks inhaler, and tissues. Okay, because she's got a cold. You know, you're wiping your nose, you're needing some Vicks, and then you got the other things that a teen would carry: some, compact, your lipstick, your eyeshadow, in case you need to refresh your makeup. So I mean, everything kind of adds up. But missing are the purse itself, in addition to her wallet. Now, I don't know if, and I don't think anybody knows if there was anything else in her purse that was missing. But I mean, it looks to be that it was pretty full with stuff, with the normal things a 16-year-old would have had. But the purse itself, again, is missing, with her wallet and a cross necklace that she always wore. And everyone said she always had this necklace on. So it's kind of been suggested the killer possibly took these items as trophies. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, from everything we know about killers that take trophies, they're usually just small trinkets. So, I could see taking her necklace, but her wallet and purse, it just seems like, if you're going to take her purse, why not take the whole purse? Like, why would you dump everything out and take the purse itself? Now, her wallet, I mean, I don't know. I think killers have saved like license, a victim's license or something like that, so that they have their picture and name and everything on it. So maybe they just grabbed the wallet and took it so that they could take the license out later. But the actual purse, I mean, I don't know. It just seems so odd. Unless maybe they needed a bag to carry the stuff in. Maybe they grabbed the necklace, the wallet, and were like, oh, let me grab the purse and carry this in. I don't know. It's just supposition. So I don't think any of us, will ever know. Um, the biggest question, though, obviously, aside from who killed her, is why the police ever believed there was an occult element. And why did they lie about the case files being destroyed? I mean, they gave an excuse for almost half a century to anyone who asked. They continued to say that the files and crime scene photos were not available. They were, they just continued to say, no, 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 we don't have the files. They were all destroyed in the hurricane. And then they continued to tell people that the crime scene photos weren't there anyway, that they had been lost, which is absolutely not true. The files with the photos were there the entire time. So why did they lie about it? And why lie about it being an occult thing? And I guess lie is the wrong word, because the police did in the beginning say, we don't see an occult element. But why did they stick to not telling people that, no, there weren't crosses, there weren't dead animals, they didn't, get that information out there to anyone. They just continued to let people in the neighborhood and in the town think that they had a bunch of Satanists out killing people. I don't know. It just seems ridiculous to me. But again, hindsight being 2020. So the magazine has said that to this day, residents that remember the case refuse to discuss it because they're scared to have their name printed. They even say the police department didn't want to go on the record, that they would talk some, but absolutely would not go on the record. And even the information that they did receive came to them in white envelopes without a return address. Now that's kind of interesting. If this weren't any kind of occult killing, which it doesn't appear to be, I mean, it appears that for whatever reason, somebody made this up and just ran with it, or it got blown out of proportion. And, maybe there were branches that happened to fall around her that somebody's like, oh, that looks like it could be the shape of a coffin, or, oh, look, those branches look like they're in the shape of a cross. And we all know how rumors spread. So maybe it went that way and just they ran with it. But if we know that it wasn't an occult killing, why are people so scared to talk? I don't understand why people are so nervous about having their name out there associated with it. So, you know, I don't know. Some of the things that were written in the letters that they received, though, were as follows. So one said that a witch coven had been threatening that they would kill or sacrifice a child on or near Halloween. Now, she disappeared on August 7th, though. So, I mean, that's 2 months before Halloween. So, that's not even close to Halloween. So, I don't know why that would matter anyway. I mean, aside from the fact that we don't believe that it was a coven of witches, even if it were, if they're saying that they're threatening to kill or sacrifice a child on Halloween or around Halloween, why did they take her on August 7th? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Um, Another person said that her uncle was a police officer, the person who wrote the letter, not Jeannette, but the person who wrote the letter said, hey, my uncle was a cop at the time, and they told me that they found arrows carved into trees leading to the body, which again, I don't think that's true. They also said that the uncle told them there were animals dead that had been tied to a tree and others in jars. That isn't even like what animals fit in a jar. Like what you got some squirrel and shoved it into a jar. Like it just doesn't make any sense. It's ludicrous. And then they said that later there were reports of animals being hung in the same way on the reservation. So yet again, rumors of people from the reservation being involved in this, which there's absolutely no proof of. So again, you have rumors going around that someone whose family member was supposedly a police officer told them about. Again, don't believe it. Um, Another letter said the cops covered it up because they didn't want to tarnish the reputation of the town. And they went on to say that a friend of theirs had witnessed a sacrifice, but it was never reported on. So basically, they were saying that their friend witnessed a sacrifice and told the police, and then never heard anything else about it. That they never heard any reports on it from the news. They never heard back from the police, nothing. Come on. I mean, can you imagine? First of all, who did they sacrifice? You know? I mean, if they're, the whole thing with these human sacrifices is, like they said, they wanted a child because they're saying, it needs to be someone young and innocent. And I think they usually say it has to be the blood of a virgin or something. So you're going to tell me that another child went missing and was sacrificed and nobody mentioned it. Nobody talked about another missing child. Nobody reported it. And the body never surfaced. I mean, does that sound logical? Because it does not sound logical to me. So, again, I don't even know why somebody would take the time to write a letter that says something so ridiculous. But, I don't know. Maybe they believe it. They believed it enough to write the letter, I guess. In addition, a friend of the nephew's said that he tried investigating, but said as well that everyone he tries to talk to is, quote, scared to death. I mean, so apparently the nephew and this friend picked up, they say picked up when the police investigation kind of ended. So apparently, the police are investigating, that ends, and then her nephew and this friend are like, no, there's got to be more that can be done. So we're going to start investigating on our own. But that everyone who tries to talk to is too scared to talk. So this friend, I believe the nephew has since passed, but the friend has vowed to continue to investigate this. And he believes and said that everyone he talks to also believes that it was covered up because she was killed by Satanists. So apparently, the nephew and this friend did think that it was the work of some kind of satanic cult. He said he talked to the last person to see Jeannette alive, which was a friend. I don't believe her name has ever been mentioned. Again, if it was, I didn't see it. But I don't believe that anyone has personally called this person out. But the friend that supposedly was the last one to see her alive also believes that or he said he also believes this friend was in a cult, and he believes this friend could be part of her death. He believes the friend possibly set her up. So I guess his thought is that this friend was in a cult, put her up as, I guess, their sacrificial person and led her out there to be sacrificed. but now the friend has since died. So there's no way to really talk to her or investigate at this point. He did say that his big reason for thinking that is because she would call him in the middle of the night. And no matter what he said, she would always bring it back to it being a satanic killing. And she was so firm on that along with some other things he knew about her led him to believe that she had to have been part of this. He feels like she was part of the satanic cult and that she was part of the killing. I don't personally believe that, but he did. He believed it so much, in fact, that he tried suing the police department to make them test scrapings from Jeanette's clothing and fingernails for DNA, but he lost. So, you know, I don't know. I have mixed feelings on that. I think that if you are a police officer or the police department and you know there was no occult activity or anything, and this person comes to you and is like, I need you to test this stuff now because we know it was a sacrifice. In your mind, you may be thinking, okay, this guy's a kook. We're not going back on this thing. There's no new evidence. There's no new anything. We're not opening this, or not opening. I mean, it is still open, but we're not going to go dredging up the past and trying to do this when nobody else has come forward with any new information. But on the other hand, why wouldn't you test for DNA? Why wouldn't you? I mean, if there truly were scrapings that they have from her clothing and fingernails, why wouldn't you test it? I mean, I will never understand that. You hear this on so many cold cases or even people that are in prison that are swearing by their innocence. They will yell and scream about, just test it, just test the stuff for DNA, and you will find out what happened. And these police departments refuse to do it. And I cannot understand that. I mean, if we know and are going to say that DNA is almost 100% all the time, and we know that, you know, to the point that even jurors expect DNA to convict somebody because everyone's heard about DNA being the end all be all of solving a case, then why would you not check it? Because that possibly could be the answer to everything. So I don't understand it, but apparently the judge felt the same way as the police department because he did lose that fight. So there are several theories and possible persons of interest. Um, so I'll go over a few of those. I don't know that any of these are viable suspects, and I personally am not putting any of these people out there. But there has since been a book written, and you have people like the nephew's friend still investigating. So there are a lot of theories out there, and there are a lot of persons of interest out there. Some are still alive, some aren't. So I'm gonna go over them, but this isn't coming from me. I didn't investigate them, so I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. So when I was reading the Weird New Jersey magazine thing online, after the article, like every article, there's a place that you can put comments. And someone under the comments said that lead is used in certain rituals to, quote, get in touch with oneself. So they believe she took it willingly and it killed her. That maybe she was out there trying to perform some kind of spiritual or some, kind of thing that would help her get in touch with herself. I guess maybe like in the same sense as people going to a shaman and cannot think of the name of it, but ayahuasca, however you say it. People taking that to get in touch with themselves. So I guess it's kind of the same thought process. I don't know how you would take lead. Like, I don't know, like you shave off some lead scrapings. I don't know, but they think she took it willingly and accidentally died from it. They also mentioned that there were 5 rocks found around her. Now, I don't know. You can't tell from the pictures it's a very close up shot, the crime scene photo. So I guess if you backed out, you could see more and know whether or not there was anything found around her. But they say that there were 5 rocks found around her. And they think that these 5 rocks represent earth, fire, water, air, and spirit. So they believe that she had these rocks, set out around her to represent these things. And then she takes this lead to get in touch with herself and accidentally kills herself. Um, Again, nobody mentioned any rocks. I didn't see any in the crime scene photo, but you can't really tell it being so close up. But that's a theory. I don't know that it's a great one or at the top of my list, but it is a theory. Um, Another theory is that, so they say that she was very involved in an evangelical program to minister to others. And it's thought that she possibly tried to talk to the wrong person about her faith. That, you know, they say she was really big on ministering to others and talking about faith and trying to help other people come to the church. And that she possibly tried to minister to someone who was actually a Satanist and they killed her for it. Um, However, the book that I was talking about, it's called The Devil's Teeth, stated that she did barely more than answer phones at the church, in the crisis center that the church had. So, the way the book talks, she wasn't even really that involved in this church program as everybody has made it out to be. Again, I don't know whether or not that's true, but I imagine the people that wrote this book probably delved into this pretty in depth to get as much information as they could. So I would tend to believe them more than rumors. So, if she was not as involved as everyone's saying, she may not have been out there ministering to every single person. So it seems kind of ludicrous to think that just because she tried to talk to somebody about God, they killed her. Also, a lot of people have said that she got so involved in this church program because she had been a drug addict and got clean and then gave her life to the Lord. And the book says this is ridiculous too, that her sister had been in rehab, not her, and that Jeannette had never had any kind of history of doing drugs. Again, just the marijuana, which everybody was doing in the 70s. So I don't really think her smoking some weed make her this huge drug addict. So I think that probably could pretty much be put to bed. Um, Balt. Okay, I'm gonna try to pronounce this again. I have no idea how you say this, but Baltusrol Red. I don't know. He was a seasonal caddy at the golf club there. Again, I have no idea how you actually pronounce that name, so I'm sure I butchered it. Um, but anyway, so Mr. Red, we'll just say Mr. Red because I have no idea what that first name is. But he was a seasonal caddy at the golf club, and he had a camp at the quarry about 50 yards from her body was found. So a lot of people thought that he could be involved. Now, the book says, though, that he had been ruled out by the police and he did pass away in the 80s. So they have not been able to. I mean, obviously, nobody's able to do any kind of interview with him now. And in case you heard that crazy sound, that is our schnauzer. Did you hear him again? Yes. So he's yawning, and when he yawns, he makes these insane sounds. I have never heard a dog make sounds like that, but he's he's ridiculous. So I apologize for the noise, but if you listen to us, you're familiar with Cough. And if this is your first time, you'll become familiar with him because he's constantly snoring or making noises. Um, but I'm his emotional support human, so he won't go far from me. So he has to be here. So hopefully you find it endearing and not annoying. Um, let's see the next person of interest, Mike A. They didn't list his last name, and I didn't look for it because again, I'm not trying to put anybody out there. He was a classmate of hers who they say would give her a ride um, often, and supposedly people say he was obsessed with her and into the occult. In fact, they say that he was a self-proclaimed warlock. Allegedly, a car that looked like his was seen in the area on the day that she went missing. It has also been reported that he sexually assaulted several girls. I would imagine with for them to say his car was reported as being in the area, who did they report that to? I would imagine the police. And if the police knew that and investigated and didn't arrest him, and nothing really came of it. I imagine there was probably not anything to it. Either way, he passed away in 2010. So, although we would love to know what happened to her, if it were him, I don't know that we ever will. Um, Another person of interest for a lot of people is the man whose dog dug up the bone. They say that it was quite a distance away from their house, the quarry. And so a lot of people have questioned whether or not the dog would have gone that far to bring this bone back had he not been there before. So a lot of people, say that, oh, the dog went back there and got the bone because the dog knew it was there. I think that, you know, I think here's my thing. I think that if we start accusing everyone who finds a bone or finds a body, that we run the risk of people not trying to look for missing persons anymore. I know that we have to look into them, but clearly they knew who this man was and they talked to him and ruled him out. So he's not really a person of interest to me. And I think that continuing to focus on him, you know, after the police obviously cleared him is just making it to where other people don't want to even look for missing persons because they're afraid of being accused. Um, some people say the reverend that she was under at the church needs to be looked into further. But again, the church swears she wasn't really that involved. She worked at the Crisis Center. She came to church with her parents, and that was it. Um, Another person of interest is Tommy R. He was a night watchman at the quarry, and a lot of people have commented that he was, and this is their way of putting it, not mine, but quote unquote mentally slow. Um, Police did rule him out though because they said that his rounds at the quarry were too far from the crime scene. Now, I don't know why you would clear somebody just because their rounds are far from there. I mean, if they're a night watchman and they're there the entire night, how do you know that they didn't go out further? It's not like there was a camera watching them. So I don't know. I hope they had more than that to rule him out. But he is still alive. So if anything else comes up, he still is available to be questioned. And then the last suspect that I read about was Otto Nilsson. He was an accountant with a history of mental instability and domestic violence. So he was a very volatile person. He was arrested and then acquitted in the murder of Joan Kramer. And then later, he was a person of interest in the murders of Mary Pryor and Lorraine Kelly in the area. He was later sent to a psychiatric hospital following an armed standoff at a VA hospital. And he later died there in 1992. So, yet another person who has passed away that we can't really talk to. But I got to tell you, this man was acquitted of one murder and a person of interest in two others, and they're all females. So, I feel like he'd probably go to the top of my list. So, I don't know. I'm not an investigator. We tell the stories. We're not, boots on the ground investigating. I have a full-time job. I don't have time to do that. But for me sitting here, I would imagine he'd be at the top of my list because I mean, if he already could have possibly been involved in the murder of three other women, it stands to reason he could have been the one that hurt Jeannette. But that's it. I mean, that's all we know. We have persons of interest, we have thoughts, but in theories, but nobody knows. And I hate that because her family never got to know what happened to her. I mean, they were thankfully able to recover her remains, but they have no idea what happened to her. And I think Jeannette deserves that. I think everyone deserves for their story to be told. So I hope that at some point, if anyone knows anything about what happened to Jeannette DePalma, that they will reach out to the police station there and let them know. But that is it for us. Again, Crime on the Record. Please make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on breaking news. We do bring out cold cases and things in our recorded videos, and then we go live a lot of times with current cases, police chases, standoffs, anything of that nature. So, again, if you subscribe, which is just checking the little plus sign on YouTube, then it will show you anytime we go live. And you can click the little box to follow us if you're listening on the podcast. And then that will alert you every time there's a new episode out on the podcast. That is all for us on this episode of Crime on the Record. We look forward to talking to you next time. Bye.